When I first met Daniel's mother, she smiled as though the air itself had offended her. It wasn't that her smile lacked warmth, it was that it carried a warning, like a flicker of lightning that never quite becomes thunder. I remember the way her eyes traveled over me, assessing, weighing, deciding what kind of woman her only son had chosen. That day, I told myself to stay calm. I told myself that love could smooth over anything, but I was wrong. The truth is, I came into that house already holding a secret that could shatter everything. A secret that wasn't meant to hurt anyone, but somehow it became the weapon she would one day use against me. When I married Daniel, I wanted a quiet life, a home filled with laughter, not tension, a place where the sound of the kettle whistling in the morning meant peace, not warning. Daniel was soft-spoken, kind, and steady in a way that made me believe love could heal all the cracks I'd collected through the years. But life has a way of showing you that the past never truly leaves. It only waits for a knock on the door. In the early months of our marriage, everything seemed ordinary in the best possible way. We lived in a small apartment above a grocery store, the kind where the smell of fresh bread seeped through the walls every morning. I would wake to Daniel humming in the shower, his voice muffled under running water. He'd emerge with wet hair and kiss my forehead, leaving little droplets behind. We didn't have much, but I felt rich in the ways that mattered. Then his mother, Evelyn, began to visit. At first, she came once a week, bringing casseroles, folded laundry, and unsolicited advice. She said she wanted to help, but her kind of help always left the air heavy. She'd glance around my kitchen as if the cabinets whispered secrets about me. She'd correct how I sliced vegetables or rearrange my spice rack for efficiency. "Daniel likes his mother's way better," she'd say, with a smile that cut just enough to sting. I tried to be patient. I told myself she just needed time. But every time she left, Daniel grew quiet, as though her presence had peeled away a layer of him I wasn't supposed to see. The truth I carried was older than my marriage, a child I had given birth to before I met Daniel. His name was Noah. He was born from a relationship that had ended long before I found peace again. I had been young, scared, and alone when I decided to let him be raised by my cousin abroad. It wasn't abandonment, it was survival. I visited when I could, sent money, letters, small gifts. Daniel didn't know. Some secrets, I thought, protect love rather than destroy it. But secrets are never content staying buried. The first time I felt the shift, Evelyn came by unannounced on a gray Thursday afternoon. The smell of rain clung to her coat. She carried a pie, her peace offering, she said. Daniel wasn't home, so it was just the two of us. "I found something interesting today," she began, her tone too light to be innocent. She placed a photograph on the table, a picture I had once mailed to my cousin years ago. It was of me holding Noah as a baby, both of us smiling under the shade of a jacaranda tree. My heart stopped. I was cleaning out Daniel's old drawers and came across an envelope addressed to you. "It must have slipped in by mistake," she said, watching my face carefully. I knew she was lying. That envelope could not have been in Daniel's drawer. Evelyn sipped her tea. "Who's the child?" My mouth dried. I tried to speak, but my voice faltered. He's family." "Oh, I see," she said, setting her cup down gently. "Family." Her eyes gleamed with something sharp. "Does Daniel know about this family member of yours?" I shook my head. She leaned back, smiling faintly. "Secrets have a way of coming out, dear, especially in marriage. But perhaps, if you're careful, some truths can stay quiet for a price." Her words hung in the air like smoke. That was the first time she hinted at it, that she could keep my secret if I cooperated. From that day, Evelyn became a constant shadow in our marriage. She began to advise Daniel on every choice we made. She questioned my spending, criticized how I kept the house, even commented on when we should start a family. But beneath the surface of every remark was a silent threat. That photograph, that truth she held. At first, I thought I could handle her manipulation. I smiled when she pushed, stayed polite when she crossed lines, but inside, I was unraveling. Every time she looked at me, I wondered if she'd told him. Every time Daniel smiled at me, I wondered if it was a lie. Then one evening, she called me. "I need your help," she said. "There's a charity event next week. I want you to volunteer. It would look good for our family." I told her I couldn't. I had work deadlines. "Oh," she replied, her tone suddenly cold. "You know, I was just talking to Daniel about how strange it is that you never speak of your past. I might have mentioned that photo I found. He seemed curious." My stomach turned. "I'll be there," I whispered. "Good girl," she said, and hung up. That was how it began, the control. At first, it was favors, then money. She wanted gifts, donations, errands done in silence. Each demand wrapped in the reminder that she held something that could destroy my marriage. I told myself it was temporary, that she'd get bored, but Evelyn was never the kind of woman who grew tired of power. She called it keeping family harmony. I called it ransom. Weeks turned into months. The weight of her control grew heavier. My sleep turned shallow, my laughter shorter. I started forgetting who I was before all this, before her shadow fell over everything. Then one night, Daniel found me sitting alone on the couch long after midnight, staring at nothing. "You okay?" he asked softly. I forced a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, kissed my forehead, and went to bed. I wanted to tell him then about Noah, about his mother's threats, but fear held me back. Fear that the truth would cost me the only peace I'd ever known. I didn't realize that the silence I thought was protecting him was slowly destroying me. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of Evelyn's voice drifting from the kitchen. My heart sank before my feet even touched the floor. She was there again. When I stepped into the kitchen, Daniel was at the stove making eggs, smiling faintly. Evelyn sat at the table as if she owned the air we breathed. Her coat hung neatly over the chair, her purse resting beside it. "Good morning, dear," she said, the word dear curling with meaning. I stopped by to bring some fruit from the market. I nodded, forcing politeness. "Thank you." Daniel looked between us and smiled, oblivious to the tension. "Mom said she might help you with the charity luncheon next week." I froze. Evelyn met my eyes and gave a small, knowing smile. "Yes, I told her we should do it together. It'll be good exposure for our family, don't you think?" There it was again, that phrase, our family. She said it like she'd built it, like she owned it. Daniel turned to me. "That sounds great, right?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Of course." He smiled, kissed my cheek, and left for work. The door clicked shut behind him. The silence that followed was heavy. Evelyn stood, brushing imaginary dust from her blouse. She said, "I like him happy. It would be such a shame if that smile disappeared, wouldn't it?" I looked at her, anger trembling just under the surface. "You don't have to keep doing this." She tilted her head. "Doing what?" "Threatening me." She smiled, the kind of smile that pretends to be gentle but is carved from stone. "I'm not threatening you, darling. I'm protecting my son. And you should be grateful I'm keeping your past private." She leaned closer, her perfume, something floral and old, filling the air. "You should remember who's holding your peace together." Then she picked up her purse and left. The door shut. I sank into a chair and felt my hand shake. After that day, I stopped sleeping well. Every knock on the door made my heart race. Every time Daniel's phone rang, I feared she had told him. I started avoiding her, making excuses not to attend family dinners, but she always found a way in, through Daniel. He'd come home saying things like, "Mom misses you, she says you've been distant," or "She wants you to come help plan her anniversary party." And I would go because what choice did I have? But the more she pushed, the more I began to notice something. She wasn't just interested in keeping my secret quiet, she wanted control over everything in our lives. She'd comment on our finances, question how I spent Daniel's paycheck, even suggested she manage the household budget because young couples tend to overspend. Daniel laughed it off, thinking she was just being old-fashioned, but I saw the pattern clearly. She wanted me small, obedient, afraid. One evening, after another of her unannounced visits, Daniel and I sat on the couch in silence. He seemed uneasy. "What's wrong?" I asked. He hesitated. "Mom told me something strange today." My stomach twisted. "She said she's been helping you financially because you're struggling?" He looked at me, confused in his eyes. "Is that true?" My mind raced. Evelyn was creating cracks, preparing him to doubt me. I forced a small laugh. "No, of course not. She probably misunderstood something." He nodded slowly, still unsure. You know how she can be. But his eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than usual. Doubt had entered the room, and Evelyn had placed it there, like a seed. The next week, she called again. "I need you to withdraw $2,000 from the account," she said flatly. "There's a fundraiser I want to donate to." I was stunned. "That's not possible, Evelyn. It's Daniel's salary. And he—" "Oh, my dear, I think I'll show him that sweet little photo. Maybe he'd like to know who that baby really is." I felt my pulse in my ears. "You promised—" "I promised nothing. You're the one who made promises, didn't you? To tell him the truth, to start your marriage honestly? You didn't, and now we're here." The line went dead. That night, I withdrew the money. But something in me began to shift. For the first time, as I stood in that sterile bank lobby holding the envelope, I felt disgusted. Not with her, but with myself, with my fear. How long could I live like this? When I returned home, Daniel was waiting. He smiled and took the groceries from my hands, chatting about his day. His kindness broke something in me. He didn't deserve this half-truth life I had built around us. That night, I lay awake listening to him breathe. The city hummed softly outside our window. My secret felt like a stone pressing against my chest. Maybe Evelyn was right about one thing. Secrets always come out. But this time, I wanted it to be my choice. A week later, we had dinner at Evelyn's house. She had invited a few of Daniel's cousins, the ones who loved gossip more than air. I could feel her setting the stage. As we sat at the table, passing dishes and polite smiles, she began speaking loudly about honesty in marriage. She said, "I always say that the truth is the foundation of any union. Secrets, no matter how small, can destroy everything." She looked at me. My fork clinked against the plate. I realized she was going to do it, reveal my secret here, in front of everyone. I saw the glint in her eye. That's when something inside me went quiet. Not weak, not afraid, still. I placed my fork down gently. I said, "You're absolutely right, Evelyn." The room fell silent. Sometimes, I continued, truth does destroy things. But sometimes it sets people free. Daniel looked confused. "What's going on?" Evelyn's smile faltered. "I think your wife has something to say," she said sweetly. I looked her in the eye and nodded. "I do. And for the first time, I decided I would tell the truth
on my terms, not hers.
The room grew unbearably quiet after my words, like the air itself had paused to listen. Daniel's fork hung mid-air, Evelyn's lips were parted in a frozen smile, and the cousins stared at me with a kind of cautious excitement, sensing that something raw was about to unfold. My heart pounded, but my voice came out calm. Too calm, maybe, for what I was about to say. "Daniel," I began, "before you, my life was not as simple as I made it seem. There was someone before you, someone I thought I could build a life with, but it fell apart before it ever began." Evelyn shifted, clearly unprepared for me to actually speak. I continued. "I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong person. I had a child, a baby girl, who didn't survive. And I buried that truth because I thought no one could love me if they knew." Gasps rippled through the table. Daniel's eyes widened, not in anger, but in disbelief. He blinked slowly, processing every word. Evelyn's face hardened, her plan collapsing right in front of her. I looked at her directly. "Your mother has known this for months. She found out, and she's been threatening to tell you herself. She said she was protecting you, but she was only protecting her control." The silence that followed was deafening. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice tight and sharp. "You don't understand what you're saying, dear. You're upset." "No," I said, still calm. "I've been upset for a long time. I've been terrified, but not anymore." Daniel's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. He looked between us, his face pale, his eyes filled with something between heartbreak and confusion. "You knew?" he said to his mother, his voice breaking. "You knew and you used it against her?" Evelyn stammered. I was trying to protect..." "Protect what?" he snapped. "Me? Or your image of me? Because this," he pointed toward me, "this woman is my wife, and whatever she's done, she deserved honesty, not fear." I watched him, barely able to breathe. I hadn't expected him to defend me, not after hearing everything. But he did. He turned to me, his expression softer now, though still wounded. "Why didn't you tell me?" Tears filled my eyes. "Because I didn't want that pain to be the first thing you saw when you looked at me. I wanted us to start new. I wanted to be someone better for you." He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, there was something steady in them, something that told me he understood, even if it hurt. Evelyn stood, her hands trembling slightly. "Daniel, please, you can't just let this go. She lied to you. She's been manipulating you." He turned sharply. "No, Mom, you've been manipulating both of us." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For once, Evelyn had nothing to say. We left her house that night without another word. The drive home was silent, except for the faint hum of the car engine. The world outside the window looked blurred, like rain even though the sky was dry. When we reached home, Daniel didn't speak. He just walked to the balcony and stood there, staring into the dark. I stood by the doorway, afraid to break whatever was happening inside him. Finally, he said quietly, "I don't know what to feel." "I know," I whispered. "You don't have to forgive me tonight." He turned then, eyes glistening under the dim light. "It's not about forgiveness. It's about how much I love you and how much I hate that you were scared to tell me." The words cracked something open inside me. I walked toward him slowly, and when he didn't move away, I rested my forehead against his chest. His heartbeat was steady, solid, real. And for the first time in months, I felt the weight lift just a little. Days passed. Evelyn didn't call, she didn't visit, but her silence said more than words ever could. She had lost control. Daniel and I tried to find our rhythm again, though it wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, is not rebuilt overnight. There were long pauses, unfinished sentences, and moments where I caught him staring at me as if searching for pieces he'd never seen before. But we were trying. One morning, as I was watering the small plants on the windowsill, Daniel came up behind me and placed his hand over mine. He said, "I've been thinking. Maybe we should move. Start fresh, somewhere new. Away from her." I looked at him, surprised. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "You've lived in her shadow long enough. We both have." I smiled faintly. "And your mother?" He exhaled. "She'll have to live with the choices she made." That night, for the first time, we slept with the windows open. The air was cool, and the city noises felt like life. Messy, honest, unfiltered. A month later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting immediately. It was from Evelyn. Inside a single page. "You've ruined everything. He doesn't visit, he barely calls. You think you've won, but one day he'll see you for what you truly are, damaged. And when that happens, you'll be alone again." I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the drawer without a word. There was no point in responding. Some people live inside storms they create, mistaking chaos for control. Evelyn was one of them. Weeks later, Daniel and I moved to a small coastal town 2 hours away. The air smelled like salt and rain. We found a little house with peeling blue paint and an overgrown garden that we swore we'd fix someday. On the first night there, we sat on the porch, watching the sea dissolve into darkness. "Do you ever think about her?" Daniel asked quietly. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not with anger anymore. Just understanding." He looked at me. "You're stronger than you think. You know that, right?" I smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just got tired of being afraid." He took my hand, and for the first time, I believed that love wasn't about perfection or clean beginnings. It was about choosing each other through the mess, through the shadows, through the echoes of what once broke us. That night, I dreamed of the baby I lost, not as a ghost of pain, but as a small light fading peacefully into dawn. When I woke, I felt calm, not healed completely, but whole enough to begin again. Evelyn's name would always carry the memory of fear, but now it also carried the proof that I had survived it, and that, more than anything, was freedom. It had been 6 months since we left the city. 6 months of silence from Evelyn. 6 months of quiet mornings filled with ocean wind, black coffee, and the kind of peace that felt almost foreign after so much fear. But peace, I've learned, doesn't mean the past forgets where you live. One evening, just as the sun began to sink into the sea, painting the sky in tired shades of gold, there was a knock at the door. Daniel was in the garden, his hands buried in soil, tending to the little patch of herbs we'd planted weeks before. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to answer. When I opened the door, I froze. Evelyn stood there, her posture still straight, her lipstick still perfect, but there was something different. Her eyes looked smaller somehow, like life had been slowly draining from them. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at me. Finally, she said, "May I come in?" Her voice was low, cautious, not the tone of the woman who once dictated the rhythm of our lives. I hesitated, every memory of her cruelty rushing back, every threat, every whispered insult, every manipulation cloaked as concern. But then, behind her, I saw Daniel walking toward the house, and I knew this moment was inevitable. I stepped aside. "Come in." Evelyn entered slowly, her eyes wandering over the home like she was taking in the details of a world she'd never imagined for us. Daniel joined us a minute later, his face a mix of shock and guarded calm. "Mom?" She gave him a small, nervous smile. "I had to see you." He crossed his arms. "You could have called." "I wasn't sure you'd answer," she said quietly. He didn't argue because she was right. We sat in the small living room, the sound of waves faint in the distance. Evelyn's gaze flicked between us, searching for words. Finally, she said, "I came to apologize." I almost laughed, not out of cruelty, but disbelief. Evelyn, The woman who built her life on pride, apologizing? Daniel blinked, stunned. Apologize? She nodded, her fingers twisting together. I went too far. I let my fear control me. I thought if I could expose your secret, I could protect my son from being hurt. But all I did was destroy the one thing that made him happy. Her voice cracked slightly. You have every right to hate me. I looked at her, unsure what to feel. Hate was a heavy thing to carry. I had carried it for months, and it had nearly broken me. Daniel leaned forward. You hurt her. You hurt me. And for what? Because you thought you knew what was best? Evelyn's eyes shimmered with tears. She tried to blink away. Because I didn't want to lose you. I lost your father to his secrets, and I thought... She stopped, pressing a trembling hand to her lips. I thought I was saving you from the same pain. That was the first time she had ever mentioned Daniel's father in years. Daniel's voice softened, almost a whisper. Dad didn't leave because of secrets, Mom. He left because you never forgave him for being human. Evelyn closed her eyes, tears finally spilling down her face. I know, she said quietly. And I did it again. To you. To her. She looked at me, eyes swollen. You didn't deserve what I did to you. The air between us was thick with something raw and unfamiliar. Truth. I swallowed hard. Evelyn, I don't know if I can forget everything that happened, but I can accept your apology. She nodded, her shoulders trembling. That's all I can ask. She stayed for dinner that night. It was awkward at first. The conversation was shallow, polite, almost formal. But then Daniel brought up childhood memories, how Evelyn used to sing to him during thunderstorms, and something inside the room shifted. She smiled, genuinely this time. The sharpness in her eyes softened into something that almost looked like love again. Later, as I washed dishes, I felt her approach me behind me. You've made him happy, she said quietly. I didn't turn. He deserves that. He does. And you deserve peace. I turned then, meeting her gaze. I already have it. It just took me longer to believe I could. Her eyes glistened. I hope you both keep it. There was a pause, and then she reached into her purse and took out a small envelope. She wrote something. It's not much, just something I wanted you to read later. I took it, nodding, unsure what to say. When she left that night, she hugged Daniel longer than I had ever seen her allow herself to. Then she looked at me one last time and whispered, Thank you for loving my son when I couldn't. And then she was gone. I didn't open the envelope until days later. Inside was a single letter written in her tidy, careful handwriting. Mara, I used to think that control was the same as love, that if I could shape every choice, I could protect the people I cared about from pain. But I see now that all I did was spread my own fear. You've shown me what strength really looks like, not silence, not obedience, but courage in truth. Take care of my boy. He has his father's stubbornness, but your heart will steady him. If there is a heaven, I hope my mistakes weigh less there. Evelyn. I read it 3 times, and by the third, I found myself crying not for what she did, but for what she never learned until it was too late. A few months later, we received a call. Evelyn had passed away suddenly, a stroke in her sleep. Daniel sat quietly for a long time after hanging up. Then he stood and walked to the porch, staring at the sea, just like he did the night we left her house. I joined him, wrapping my arms around his waist. He said softly, She was a difficult woman, but she was still my mother. I nodded, and you were still her heart, even if she never said it right. He pressed his forehead against mine. Thank you for forgiving her. I couldn't have if you hadn't. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about freeing the person who hurt you. It was about freeing yourself from the weight of their hold. Evelyn had held my secret like a weapon once. Now it was simply a part of my story, no longer a source of shame, but proof that I had survived. Years later, when Daniel and I had our first child, a daughter, I named her Grace. Because that's what the whole journey had been about. Not revenge, not justice. Grace. Sometimes I think about how easily love can turn into fear, and fear into control. Evelyn wasn't born cruel. She was born afraid. Afraid to lose what she loved. Afraid that the world would take it from her if she didn't hold it tightly enough. And in that fear, she forgot that love isn't a chain. It's a choice you make, every single day, to trust someone even when you could destroy them with what you know. There was a time when I couldn't understand her at all. I thought she was my enemy, the villain in my story. And maybe for a while, she was. But when she stood in my kitchen that evening, trembling and small for the first time in her life, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Regret. And behind that regret, a fragile kind of love. People talk about forgiveness like it's this holy act, something you give to make yourself good. But I don't think that's true. Forgiveness isn't about being good. It's about letting go of the poison you've been drinking, hoping it will hurt someone else. When I forgave Evelyn, it wasn't because she deserved it. It was because I did. And maybe that's what life really is. A long road of learning to release what's heavy, even when it feels impossible. That secret I carried once, it no longer haunts me. It's part of my story, yes, but not the end of it. I've learned that truth can be painful, but silence is far crueler. I spent years living under someone else's power, afraid that my past would ruin me. But when I finally spoke the truth, the world didn't end. In fact, that's when my life began. Now, every morning when I watch my daughter sleep, I think about the generations of women before her. All the secrets, all the pain, all the lessons whispered through blood and time. And I promise myself that she will grow up in a home where love isn't used as a weapon, where truth isn't punished, and where forgiveness is a strength, not a surrender. If you've ever carried a secret that someone used against you, if you've ever loved someone who tried to control you through fear, I want you to remember this. You are not the sum of your mistakes, or your silence, or your shame. You are the story that rises after. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not fight back, but simply walk away, close the door, and build peace from the ruins they left behind. Would you have forgiven her? Tell me in the comments. And if my story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, because there are many of us out here learning, one story at a time, that the truth can break you, but it can also set you free.